Yo, what's going on, guys? We discussed this last week. Allegedly, the teams that may or may not be interested, or if they've touched base with the Memphis Grizzlies on Ja Morant's availability, as it seems like not only is there a rift between Ja Morant and the coaching staff with Isalo and him just having a different in philosophies and how he should be utilized, to the front office seemingly building around Jaren Jackson Jr. instead of Ja, and it just has all the ingredients for what the typical recipe deems whenever a star eventually asks out. Now, what I want to say is, according to John Krasinski, the Timberwolves have touched base with the Grizzlies on, seeing his availability. That's all we know. We do know that Jake Fisher of the Mark Stein line says that would not include Julius Randle, so we'd assume a Naz Reid package would be there. We'll discuss that later. Then the Sacramento Kings earlier in the week, I forget who reported it. It might have been the Athletic Sam Meck that said that the Kings would be interested, and they could literally just do a trade of Dennis Schroeder with Malik Monk. Obviously, they would have to wait till December or January for them to become available to be traded. I believe it's Schroeder because he was signed. So that's one. And then obviously Ira Winderman of the Florida Sun Sentinel, said that, Ja Morant seems like the typical distressed star that the Miami Heat always rejuvenate or take on as a reclamation project and have success. Now, you guys know I'm fortunate enough to work for hoopshype.com, and I've been credentialed as a media for the Miami Heat. So I've been to practices and games for the last year and a half. And I just think the way the Heat operate now is they'll take any player on if it comes for cheap or if it works for them, but I don't think they're going to expend assets to get them. So basically, if they were to get Ja Morant, it'd either be, personally, the way I see it, more than likely a deal that they could dump Terry Rozier in Brooklyn, and we'll talk about that. Or I guess if they don't want to pay Tyler Herro, maybe it's a swap. I don't know. We'll talk about that. So I want to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. What team out of the Kings, the Timberwolves, and the Heat would make the best suitors for a potential Ja Morant trade, both for the Grizzlies and Ja Morant? Your guys' thoughts. What are the likelihood of Ja Morant being traded? Hit that like and subscribe button while you're at it. It'll help out the channel a ton. And I'd like to hear your opinions. So let's break this down. We're looking at a potential franchise-altering move for any team acquiring Ja Morant for the Grizzlies to change them. And this isn't just about adding a name. It's about which team strategically fits well enough to maximize his elite talents while insulating his weaknesses. And personally, I think we've looked at all three teams, and I think it makes sense. So I think the Miami Heat, everyone would agree, if it were to work out, that would be the best. But I think the Timberwolves are the team that would maybe benefit the most, because it would make them a really hardcore contender, but it could be a roster crippling overpay, as a deal that would more than likely have to be built around, if it's not Julius Randle, it seemingly would have to be a Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, Mike Conley, Leonard Miller deal for Ja Morant and John Conchar. Maybe they throw in Gigi Jackson, but just to make the salary match, you have to take all those players, and you're kind of gutting your core rotation. You're losing one of your top guards in Dante DiVincenzo, a veteran who's stabilized your offense for the last several years, even though Father Time has caught up to Mike Conley, and your versatile combo big who stretches the floor, in Naz Reid, and your six-man. And in the Fansbo trade model, that projects a 8-win drop-off. And for a team that needs to solidify themselves as contenders this year, that could be a death sentence to your contention window if Ja Morant weren't to work out. And you're trading proven depth for a single star, and I think the math simply doesn't work out. And from an on-court fit, schematically, I think it's a contradiction. Ja Morant's game is built on paint penetration, and so is Anthony Edwards. Rudy Gobert's presence, while defensively still pretty good, near elite, clogs that same paint, and defenses will sag off, daring Ja Morant to shoot, and suddenly his best strength is neutralized. Furthermore, you're removing key defensive pieces to add a defensive liability that's going to put even more strain on Gobert, Jaden McDaniels, and Anthony Edwards. I think this trade makes the team worse, both on paper and if you look at the projected analytics just based off of the team numbers. Now, the Sacramento Kings have been a team that loves their offensive fire, and basically their defense is gasoline. And this deal, I think, is the most straightforward and, weirdly enough, I think the most realistic. Malik Monk and Dennis Schroeder, who I think would be perfect for Tomas Isalo's system that he wants, kind of this European style that Dennis Schroeder would be able to just run to perfection like he does for the German Federation basketball. And Malik Monk is just a six-man or starter that fits what they need. And I'll admit, the thought of Morant in this high-paced system, running pick and rolls with Domantas Sabonis is enticing, and it fills the creation void left by the De'Aaron Fox trade and would instantly supercharge their transition game. The defense sucks, and it's already a non-starter, and I think this is a deal breaker. The Kings are already a defensive catastrophe, ranking 27th in defense rating. You can't just plug in a minus defender like Morant into the league's second worst point of attack defense and expect anything but an unmitigated disaster. There's no Bam Adebayo or Rudy Gobert to cover his mistakes. Domantas Sabonis ain't doing that. You'd be creating, an offensive juggernaut that could give you 100 and something points a night, but they're going to be giving up 130, 140 points a game. And that's a fun regular season team. That's just not even a contender, maybe a playoff team. And if you see on the projected wins, it's like -3. So I think that's just a move that doesn't solve their core issues, which is defense. Now, the next deal is, I think, interesting because you have yourself Claxton going to Memphis, Terry Rozier and Jaime Jaquez going to the Brooklyn Nets. And I think most people would agree that the more complex framework is this one, but it's the most realistic way that I see a deal for the Brooklyn Nets to be involved is that, look, Ja Morant goes to the Heat. He's making 39.4. Claxton's making 25.3 from Brooklyn. Dru Smith is on that $7.8 million deal. This deal would have to happen in January. And Terry Rozier goes to the Nets and gets bought out, if that's even possible. Or if his salary is removed from the team's salary, then they wouldn't even have to do this. They would just get, I guess they would just send Jaquez. But for Miami, this is another viable path to land their guy. So instead of sending out Tyler Herro, they're packaging Terry Rozier's expiring deal and Jaime Jaquez, who's having a great season. You guys, for all these deals, I know I didn't include draft compensation. You can just say what draft capital you think there should be. But in this way, the Heat get their franchise point guard in a deal without touching Herro, and they do have to trade Jaquez, and they get rid of Rozier, but they acquire a superstar and let the culture handle the rest. For Memphis, they're fully committed to the rebuild here. Instead of taking back win now players from Miami, I don't even think it's rebuild. They're retooling. They're getting Nic Claxton, who fits next to, I think this helps them retool and be competitive now. They get Claxton, who fits next to Jaren Jackson Jr. and Zach Edey. They get huge. And for Brooklyn, they're just acting as a facilitator. They get compensated with Jaime Jaquez and maybe another draft capital, and they get off Claxton's long-term money. They buy out Rozier if they have to, or they just take on the real prize of Jaime Jaquez, a high motor, versatile wings whose gritty identity comes on a contract that they control. So I think this is just a classic three-team deal that everybody gets what they need. Miami gets a superstar, Memphis gets defensive pieces that fits their team, and it's a flexible deal for everybody. And it's a little bit maybe of a higher price to pay than you would if it was the Tyler Herro deal. Like, for example, in the Tyler Herro deal, you would just do a Tyler Herro. I believe you just have to do Tyler Herro and Dru Smith for Ja Morant, and it works out. And in that deal, I think Miami's the best deal because the primary path of a straight-up Tyler Herro, Dru Smith swap checks every single box. I think the Heat culture is what works out for a player with Morant's history. This is a non-negotiable. He wouldn't be coming in as a savior, but he'd be coming in to conform to the non-negotiable standard set by Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley. This will allow him to rehab himself and become maybe a really good player. The Heat are the 6th-ranked defense, one of the best offense, best scoring one, and they have Bam Adebayo and Khalil Ware. And in this deal, Andrew Wiggins is still there. Nikola Jovic, like they have so much versatility and switchability and elite rim protection that Miami can withstand the downgrade from either Herro or a Jaquez leaving the team and have Morant fit. So I just think from a schematic standpoint, it works. So what I just want to wrap this video is by saying that these 3 teams all have their pros and cons. Yes, obviously the Miami Heat would be the best because I think the Timberwolves, the deal would gut them in terms of the rotation and depth as a contender. The Kings deal just creates an unwinnable and further unbalanced team that we're already seeing. So just be doubling down. It's just, I mean, they are the rule of insanity, just doing the same thing and expecting different results. I think if the Heat are able to do this, this would just be a strategic masterstroke. You acquire a superstar, you place him in the one environment built to handle his volatility. You insulate his defensive flaws with an elite system and anchor, and you unleash him in a system that already runs at his preferred breakneck speed. It would just be a win for everybody. I think that's a prescription that is clear. Ja Morant to the Miami Heat is the best move that makes basketball financial and organizational sense for everybody involved. Let me hear your thoughts down below. That's it for me, guys. Peace.